At the airport, waiting at the gate, I retrieve from my backpack the ukulele-sized travel guitar I bought in Spain last year and just start noodling around. I don't realize anyone can hear until the guy sitting across from me starts nodding in appreciation. Then the lady to my left says beautiful, and I realize, without meaning to, I've brought some small musical pleasure to two complete strangers. I'm embarrassed and ask the guy in the seat opposite me if he plays. A little, he says, but not like that. The lady says she's trying to focus on the music in spite of the airport ambience. So many beautiful notes, she tells me. My standard response is to point out how I'm old and I've been playing for a long time. It doesn't take much to bring a sense of music to someone. A little noodling around on a toy guitar is all it takes. Here we are on the plane waiting for takeoff. It seems rickety and badly maintained, and all of the seats are coming apart. Normally I'd be a little tipsy to fly, but my current medication doesn't allow, so I'm definitely jittery. I guess I'll just have to put my faith in the glory of what's left of the Roman Empire and trust it isn't some vengeful descendant of Benito Mussolini in the driver's seat. Last summer, the focus of our trip to Spain and Portugal, for me, emerged as an appreciation for religious art. This time, I feel drawn not as much by the Sistine Chapel and the glory that is Naples and Rome as by the promise of pizza. The first day in Rome is intense. The landing is smooth and we make our way through customs without a snag and locate the bus to take us into the city. The legendary traffic of Rome is in immediate evidence, and it takes well over an hour to navigate the 14 miles from the airport to the Termini metro station. There, after some confusion, we find our subway. Vika has purchased an all-week pass for every mode of public transportation, and by the end of the first day, we've already used it 3 times. Our hotel, which turns out to be a bed and breakfast, is just 2 subway stops away near Circus Maximus, the ruins of an enormous Roman arena, a speedway for chariot races and gladiator battles, and presumably flaming Christians. Our host, Claudia, is an outgoing woman who seems comfortable in any language, an ability that never fails to leave me in stunned admiration and mute embarrassment of my own inability to barely manage even my own native tongue. The room is centrally located, and after settling in, always a somewhat nerve-wracking experience, we set out for a walk around Circus Maximus, which takes us from one thing to another until we find ourselves amidst Roman constructions both in ruins and fully intact. There really are no words to describe the power of these white marble and colonnaded structures, populated with classical sculptures in monumental expression of power and glory. It is not hard to see the high concept of an eternal city embodied in stone. The bread and circus of gladiatorial combat, flayed Christians, and animal slaughter that were the Saturday matinee for the Roman Republic hold sway today for the modern American citizen in the form of consumer goods, mass media spectacle, and empty and contrived political rivalry, all sublimations of death, power, and mind control. I find myself balancing pain management with the strains of foreign travel. My medicine is slow to act, but once it kicks in, it lasts for 6 to 8 hours. But I have been warned that to drink while taking it is extremely risky, so I've avoided wine or beer. Vika has the idea that if I stop the meds, I might be able to manage pain with alcohol, an idea that appeals to me. We'll see. After yesterday's exploration, we hop a city bus back to the central station to exchange some dollars for euros at a money exchange. Tourists don't usually use buses, and we are clearly the only non-Italians on the crowded stand-up ride. Vika says I look Italian. A little guy, as she says. After a subway ride back to our room and a short rest, we head out for dinner. Our first pizza. Claudia recommends her favorite spot, but after a long and harrowing walk, pedestrian traffic is at great risk in Rome. Walk signs at crosswalks are short-timed, and when they switch back to don't walk, you'd better run. And sometimes you just have to go for it. Unlike in the States, pedestrians do not have the right of way. We find our pizza destination, but it's closed on Tuesday, so we find another. A little place called Pizza Alice. What can I say? It is amazing. In the style of Caserta pizza on Federal Hill back home in Providence, with a crust to die for, tangy sauce, perfect cheese. I will share with you later the origins of my love for pizza, an obsession that dates back to my earliest childhood, and an amusement park pizzeria called Jolly Charlie in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. Pizza Alice is a perfect introduction to the spiritual center of the only food that matters. It is the evening of the first day. On the walk home, we stop for dessert at a small place, a sidewalk cafe near our bed and breakfast. Little pastries and a Coke for me, a wine spritzer for Vika. We are jet-lagged and exhausted and fall asleep immediately, but are awakened at 1:30 a.m. by what sounds like gunfire in the distance. We learn at breakfast the next morning of some sort of military celebration late at night, and of drunken soldiers firing at the moon. It wakes us up, so we watch a couple of documentaries in preparation for our plans the next day. And here I am, the next morning. Vika is off at the Circus Maximus for some sort of virtual reality experience, but I do a rare thing and decline. I didn't come to Rome to strap a television to my face and experience it overlaid with pixelated historical recreations. I said so. Yeah, I suppose I am being negative, but when you say no, are you not being negative? My life in Catch-22. But the beauty of it is that now I have a rare moment to myself, to sip a tiny coffee at an outdoor cafe looking oh so Italian, and writing. Vika mentioned yesterday that she was expecting to see stunning, beautiful Italian women everywhere. But so far, she says, not so much. I beg to differ. There's a beautiful spirit here. A certain party like it's 1999 decadence. I can't put words to it. I felt it crossing the grounds of the Circus Maximus today. A sense of history, of spilled blood, of terror, of the insanity that somehow a republic might last forever. A delusional sense of antiquity and cultural memory so filled with genius, with empire building, with poetry, with blood. It takes residence in the spirit of the people.
Voglio sfatare questo mito, oppure voglio rompere
It is in the melody of the Italian language, the most musical I've ever heard, and you see it in every face. Men, women, everyone is a stunning beauty. The next day, is it Wednesday? We discover nightlife. It begins as I've already described. Vika in virtual reality and I in a cafe. But even before this, at the bed and breakfast, Claudia, our hostess, tells us of how she once wanted to be an actress. And what is stopping you now? I always say that. People often believe they've reached a point in their lives when the things they dreamed in their youth have drifted out of reach. But it's never true. Life is long and everything is always on the table. Claudia gives the impression of strength. She admits she's slowed down, but there is a glimmer in her eye. She is quintessentially Italian, all passion and style. She talks with her hands. I go on about how theater needs people of all kinds, all ages, all instincts and abilities. There's always community theater. You can do something for the simple love of it. This is what amateur means. I've delivered this rant of encouragement many times. It sounds preachy, I know. And the illustrative parable is my own brother, who took up the guitar at age 65. It's not about being good at it, it's about doing it. Listen to me. Ha! As if I know anything. But these are positive words, and positivity never hurts. We regroup and head to the Colosseum. The weather is warm, but not oppressively so. Rome is filled with tourists, and the Colosseum is crowded with them. It is enormous. The photographic image cannot capture the immensity. It's funny, in photographs, how the frame reduces the scale of things. Bounded by the frame, all things are made to fit. But reality is framed very differently, by time, by atmosphere, by company, by mood, by history, by what you had for breakfast. In this light, the Colosseum is a place I've seen thousands of times in images, and yet have never seen. It is a place where gladiators fought to the death, wild animals were pitted against each other, naval battles staged, all manner of cruel diversions, like NASCAR races, like the NFL, like the Boston Bruins taking on the Montreal Canadiens. Vika wonders if the Colosseum is bigger than Gillette Stadium. The Colosseum may be larger, who knows? By any measure, it's an architectural wonder. Our tickets allow entrance to the interior. It is astounding, but we are crowded into a herd of tourists, and after touring 2 of the 5 or so levels, we head for the exit. We decide to go back to our room for a siesta, but stop for our second pizza of the trip. 2 days, 2 pizzas. I am in gustatory paradise, but there goes my diet. Vika is already sick of pizza and pasta, but there is a literally delicious irony in the fact that my favorite food is Italian, and here we are in Rome. This pizza is even better than the first, and we sit at sidewalk tables and find ourselves enjoying the sun, the passers-by, and the casual and inexpensive dining experience that seems to come so naturally in Europe. We stop at a little market for fruit, chocolate, and ice cream before our much-needed 2-hour break. Then, Vika sounds reveille. Off to walk the grounds of a wooded archaeological site near the Colosseum. This is acres of wooded paths, hidden grottos, hilly vistas, and enormous ruins from every stage of the Roman Empire. The palace of the late Emperor Claudius is here. We stumble upon a modern environmental sculpture inscribed in English. When you throw a stone, it will last longer than Shakespeare. Vika asks, what does that mean? A variation on the theme of ephemeral man and the eternity of nature, I suppose. Eternity unfolds as all things, again and again. Like the proverbial 1,000 monkeys typing for 1,000,000 years, how they will stumble upon the works of Shakespeare, to which I might add that what they come up with along the way may prove just as interesting. Time, stones, monkeys, Shakespeare, and the hubris of men. The archaeological grounds are not as overrun with tourists, and we are able to find a quiet, shady place to rest. There is a surreal exhibit of bird-themed high fashion, haute couture from Schiaparelli and Saint Laurent, all adorned with elegant plumage. Back to the room. We are going to investigate the rumor of a free or low-cost opera performance. The opera house is in the neighborhood of the Trevi Fountain. We make multiple subway connections and arrive at a neighborhood not unlike the more venerable parts of Lisbon or Barcelona. Narrow cobblestone streets, hills, and quaint buildings packed closely, very beautiful and buzzing with sidewalk cafes and bars, and tourists. We find the opera house, but we've been operating under a mistaken assumption. There is no performance this evening. So we quickly pivot and make our way to Trevi Fountain. On the way, we are stopped in our path by an Anglican church advertising an evening concert, the Three Tenors. This musical event is the very same as the one Vika had discovered in her pre-departure research that I discouraged as too expensive and too touristy. But here, now, I investigate the box office and find there are tickets available, side seats only, for only 15 euros. Perfect. It's hard to believe that fate would return us directly to an event we had rejected, and yet, throughout the sprawling metropolis that is Rome, here we are. You can plan, but you cannot plan a lucky accident. The stars have steered us back to this concert, and it turns out for good reason. With an hour and a half to spend before the concert, we find the Trevi Fountain, glorious, but literally covered with tourists, buzzing as bees to a hive. The experience of such a wonder is compromised by crowds of folks taking selfies with the fountain. What happens when you occupy such a place with a selfie? Does the frame diminish not only the place, but the self as well? The face becomes a marker, a cheap graffiti to say you are there, a tchotchke, a pencil-thin mustache on the Mona Lisa. The tourist notches the belt and moves on to the next attraction, as do we, but perhaps, at least, with mild embarrassment. We leave and search for a quick bite before the Three Tenors concert at 8 p.m. Vika is now decidedly tired of Italian food, but it is everywhere, and we pop into an unassuming place for a glass of wine and my third pizza in 2 days. The concert has me in tears. We have the best seats in the house. It is a piano quintet, accompanying 3 fantastic singers. The repertoire is a variation of classical and pop, including 2 gained in translation songs, Volare and Sorrento. The acoustics are a marvel, and the music is sublime. The performance of a song Bocelli made famous, Il Partitura, leaves me melted on the floor. After the show, we make our way back to the subway. The neighborhood is alive with bars and live music. On one corner, I Just Called to Say I Love You by Stevie Wonder, the sound of bubble tea. Vika likes that song. And on the next corner, a broad Neapolitan country and western twang. Can it be? Is it? No! A house band is covering the song Hotel California, like a sharp stick in my ear. Vika likes that song too. I run screaming to the metro and try to kill the beast with the steely knives of the memory of the Three Tenors. On the subway, there are 2 young people dressed in 1985 punk. So much in love, it hurts. I steal their image. We make one last stop for a beer near our room and fall off exhausted from a day packed with 3. It's the next day. We visit the Vatican Museum. I am a sucker for the deeply seated surrealism of disembodied cherubs on beds of butterfly wings, wan virgins staring into the eyes of golden archangels, laser-beam tongues of fire, UFOs on the edges of heaven, and cloven-hooved demons carrying fat, slovenly, greedy bastards to perdition. What's not to like? The Vatican is a walled nation within a nation, with a collection beyond belief. The museum unfolds like a narrative, with all threads leading to Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. Again, words fail, just as words will also fail to describe a single leaf falling from a tree. The crowded tourists compete for attention, and once we gain entrance, we quickly want to leave. It is not possible to take such a thing in, jostled by hundreds of fellow sightseers. In the evening, we set out for dinner, Greek, and music, bebop, at a venue beyond the walls that encircle the city, the very walls that failed to keep the barbarians at the gates. The place is called Casa de Jazz. It is quite an upscale spot visited by many luminaries of the musical form. Vika asks me mid-concert if they are just playing the same song over and over, and I cannot deny how bebop is a music that seems to want to fill all available space, the sound of a Jackson Pollock. They are all excellent musicians, and there is no denying the sheer dexterity of it all. But while I am caught up in the rhythmicity, I'm also nearly lulled to sleep by the relentlessly dense texture. The walk home, along ramparts still standing unscathed after 2 millennia, is mysterious and illuminated by the same moon as always. The next day, after breakfast, we walk toward the Jewish ghetto to meet our guide, Camilla, for a pre-arranged tour. Camilla is Brazilian and wonderful, and we learn of the tragic history of the Jewish people in Rome. We stand upon the footsteps of fascists and innocents and stare up at Il Duce's headquarters. I strike up conversation with the mother and daughter in our group from Englewood, New Jersey. They are surprised I'm not Jewish. The daughter is now living in Israel and was there on the day of the attack. I want to pause here and tell you of something quite remarkable. The best things that happen are things completely unplanned. All my life, I've been obsessed with indeterminacy, of leaving things to chance. When you plan, you can only hope that things go accordingly. Experience becomes like water poured into a bottle. It takes the shape of its container. Chance is a bottle smashed to the floor. The water takes its own shape, fantastic shapes, all beyond prediction or control. Success is the plan fulfilled, but chance can reach far beyond the wildest expectation. And so it is that I stumbled there in a narrow alley in the Jewish quarter upon a small surrealist bookstore gallery, ironically named Musée du Louvre. It is filled floor to ceiling with surrealist objects, rare first editions, photographs, collage, and absurdist ready-mades of every kind. Photos are not allowed, so I spit on the priest of propriety and surreptitiously document the space in still and moving images. The dusty little shop is piled haphazardly floor to ceiling with a history that slices my eyeball like un chien andalou. I am in love here with everything. This is a space where there is no need to make sense, another system of physics, impossible mathematics. In the here and now before the war, my name was Rose la Vie. In this here and now, my name is Maurice Meto, and it is a good surrealist name. This day is themed by death and pizza. Let me start at the end and work my way backwards to the sunrise. By the end of the day, we are exhausted. Before drifting off to sleep, we finish a beautiful film, A Roman Holiday, the 1953 romance with Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Peck. It is an exquisite essay on a love affair left alive in a state of impossibility, an unrealized ideal free from the ruins of happily ever after.
The mouth of truth. The legend is that if you're given to lying, Put your hand in there. It'll be bitten off.
Oh, the hard idea.
Let's see you do it.
Let's see you do it.
Sure. Hello. I'm sorry, just a joke.
I cannot believe we are here. Before the movie, we returned from the cooking class that Vika had reserved before our departure. I must admit that after our 2-beer lunch and a brief nap, about the last thing I want to do is hustle off manically to make a 5 p.m. appointment for a group cooking activity. The cooking class turns out to be a great time, and we learn to make pizza. We spend most of the time chatting with a nice couple from Spokane, Washington, and with a young architecture student from Norway. I break the ice. Is there a modern architect whose work you admire? We wind up trading thoughts on Frank Gehry and Le Corbusier, and the pizza we make in the class is most excellent. Food. Our 2-beer lunch is at a sushi place where Vika can catch a break from Italian fare. But it is the morning activities that are most memorable. We take a tram that carries us to the outskirts of the city along the Appian Way to visit the catacombs of Saint Sebastiano. This is an underground cemetery 3 levels deep where the remains of tens of thousands of first-century Christians were interred. Dark tunnels after dark tunnels unfold, each lined with empty sarcophagi, an underground metropolis of invisible ghosts. No amount of quicklime can hasten the heaviness of this eternity, and the road leading to this place is a narrow, walled, ancient road of mausoleum after mausoleum, as if the world itself is a forested tomb. The relics of Saint Sebastiano, always depicted as a handsome youth riddled with arrows, are there in the reliquary. We have escaped the crowds and found a place not everyone will be drawn to. There is a late sculpture by Bernini, there is an intricately carved ceiling in the church, but mostly there are tombs. Tens of thousands of empty tombs. I often dream of death as a city deep in the earth, where the dead live in subterranean caverns and tunnels, in chambers and endless passages, to pass eternity in endless conversation and meaningless society, such as we do now. In our visit to the catacombs of San Sebastiano, I see this is true. I often dream of death as a winding wooded road, walled in on either side, bounded by pines, tombs, and mausoleums. Here, in the Appian Way, I find that road. And in my dreams of death, I see a tableau mori, a painting made of bones. Here, in the ossuary of the Capuchins, on a bright Saturday in Rome, I find such things. Thousands upon thousands of bones, legs, arms, pelvises, and grinning skulls. The skeletons of hooded monks with desiccated faces, eyeless, teeth broken and gone, stand guard. It is a beautiful, terrible symmetry. Clocks and compasses and coats of arms, lamps and Victorian floral patterns, all of bone. To visit this place is to die 1,000 times, and so I do. This is a place I have seen before in my dreams. Now I am here. Our last day in Rome starts with the military parade. It is a national day of celebration in Italy, and the president is here. Fighter jets roar in close formation overhead, streaming trails of red, white, and green. Military bands in Garibaldi uniform, platoons of stern soldiers with submachine guns, the ski patrol, carabinieri in a Ferrari police car, parachutists descending slowly from the heavens, tossing flares and plumes of multicolored smoke, black helicopters like angry wasps, grinning police dogs, and a column of nurses, all in white, to a round of applause from an appreciative crowd. After a week of perfect weather, clouds have rolled in. A soft rain falls to bring out 1,000 umbrellas. Kids in carriages cry. We escape the rain at a cafe and make plans for the day to visit 2 museums, one contemporary and one folk. All museums are free of charge today, the first Sunday of the month. But as it turns out, we only make it to the Museum of Contemporary Art. Saul LeWitt, De Chirico, Duchamp's ready-mades, lots of futurists, Bala, Boccioni, Severini. Tomorrow we leave for Napoli. In the evening we have a salad and a small pizza and head home for a short siesta. At 8 we head back out for one last stroll around the Colosseum. Then to a sidewalk Syrian restaurant for a bottle of wine and late-night appetizers. There is a guitarist singing songs he doesn't really know and making it work. Dancing Queen, I Will Always Love You, Let It Be, and an assortment of Italian songs, Volare and such. He trades octaves like baseball cards, and chords or harmonies are entirely at his discretion. He's wonderful. He's not doing it for money. He seems to be paid in food and drink from the restaurant. He asks if we would sing a song. We sing Bella Ciao. The restaurant staff appear with iPhones in hand to record the brief performance. It is entirely magical. Our last night in Rome finds us slightly drunk and jamming on the street. Being somewhere is one thing, getting there entirely another. What we imagine as a leisurely metro ride to the bus to take us to Naples becomes a mad rush of mistaken stops. Finding the station we need is not on our subway line. We dash off the train and out to the street to reverse direction and double back one stop, then out to the street again for yet another direction change, and, clock ticking, make it finally to Stazione Tiburtino. There, trailing backpack and rolling bag and my little guitar with my bum arm, and only minutes to spare before the 10:30 departure time, Vika bounds up the escalator, leaving me trapped behind a nest of fellow commuters. By the time I finally gain the top of the exit, she is entirely gone. Gone. I'm stranded in Stazione Tiburtino with 2 bags, a little guitar, and a phone without service. This is not the first time this sort of thing has happened. Once in Barcelona, I found myself completely separated, with neither power nor cell phone service, and no street address to return to. In Spain, the situation lasted for 3 hours before I was able to find a place to recharge my phone and log on to a restaurant server to make a call. When I finally reached Vika, she was at a bar. Confident, she said, that I would get in touch. Here, at Tiburtino, I scan the situation. There are 3 exits to the street. I choose the door on the left. She's not there. It seems wise not to wander too far, so I go back and choose door number 2. There she is. We run. Not walk, but run to the commercial bus area and find our bus, motor running, ready to leave. Seconds to spare. Off we go. To take my mind away, I start a new book, Swan's Way, the first part of Proust's epic of minute observation. I know how insufferably pretentious this must sound, but I'm drawn to language more than story. For me, a great writer is one who finds endless passages among the most commonplace of things. Writing is a fractal zoom, peeling infinite layers to reveal no inner core, no thrilling tale, no insight and moral revelation, but only more layers, an infinite spiral projection. Because the story is that there is no story, only sense and impression, and that is all. Like music, like life, in the first 10 pages of Swan's Way, the protagonist gives so detailed a reading of the transition from wakefulness to sleep, the ritual kiss from his mother, and the trauma and terror when the ritual is broken, that it takes me back to sweat-soaked night terrors, piling blanket upon pillow, face to the cowboy wallpaper to shield my eyes from the hungry mirror. We arrive in Naples and find the usual setbacks in locating and checking into our bed and breakfast. A young man named Francesco rescues us at last. Our 5th floor room has a balcony overlooking multi-level houses that have the utilitarian design of post-war reconstruction. The neighborhood is not at all touristy, but more gritty and real. Laundry hangs from balconies opposite our own. Teenagers flirt and wrestle in the alley. Our room is large, airy, with a veranda overlooking the fruit markets and shops below. Perfect. We immediately head out to visit a castle. There is a history here. The castle of St. Elmo is a 13th century fortress that figures prominently in the Second World War. It overlooks a high promontory that affords aerial views of this beautiful coastal city from every side. During the Nazi occupation, the castle was used to house arms and ammunition. The city of Naples suffered heavily under Allied bombardment, with over 20,000 Italian civilian casualties. During the occupation, the Nazi commander declared that all Italian men between the ages of 18 and 30 were to report for deportation to labor camps. 150 men were rounded up. But Italian spirit is strong, and the Nazis had gone too far. A 4-day spontaneous uprising exploded that helped shift the course of the war in the Italian theater. A group of partisans stormed the ammunition depot at Castle St. Elmo and liberated weapons and ammunition, freed the captured men, and staged an insurrection that led to the overthrow of the Nazi occupiers and eventual liberation through collaboration with Allied forces as they gained a foothold on the Italian coast. The entire city of Naples gives evidence of the reconstruction that took place after the war, as neighborhoods of modern buildings border Renaissance churches and villas. At a distance, the city is a jewel glistening on the Mediterranean Sea. From within, a canvas by James Ensor of 1,000 masks in innumerable languages. As a kid, I was aware of a saying attributed to American GIs returning from active duty in Italy: "See Naples and die." I understand. We have dinner, seafood pasta, gnocchi, pizza, and a bottle of wine. All are excellent. But food. I want to fast for a day. Here, back at the room, I am wiped out. I need a moment of quiet. There are times on these vacations when I just want to do nothing, to eat nothing, to drink nothing. This is now. I need some sleep. I sleep and dream. I am an assistant lighting director in a stage performance. In the yard of my childhood home, under the weeping willow, a purring cat dozes. There is a cow. "9:30 a.m. After coffee and a brioche, we are walking to the metro station for a 10:30 rendezvous with a free walking tour. We often reserve a spot on these tours. It's easy in an unfamiliar city to have not a clue as to where to go, what to see, and what you are looking at when you see it. These tours are on a free of charge, pay-as-you-wish basis. The guides are always young people, typically college students, fluent in the native language of the group. Today we meet our guide, another Francesco, at a plaza devoted to the Italian poet Dante. Francesco grew up in Napoli, right over there. His last name is French, Gerard. He refers to his father as the monster who was my papa. He is full of such things. We trade conversation about teaching, the appeal of a passionate vocation, and other digressions. He is a student of philosophy. A majestic monument to Dante Alighieri marks the center of a square populated with restaurants and booksellers. Francesco is a natural teacher with the vocabulary and oratorical flourish of a spirited storyteller. He will say something like, "As everyone knows, throughout history, Napoli has always been an important center for Italian culture." A pregnant pause. "No, everyone may know it, but it's not true. At different times in its history, Napoli has been under the rule of Spanish and French kings, and before all that, the ruins that run under our feet are of Greek origin, ancient Greece. Napoli is a city of many cultures, many languages, and a great variety of kings. But, with apologies to my Danish friends, I have no love for kings." That's the way he speaks, full of passion and personal asides, and so much information it feels like a download. I learned that Napoli is derived from Napoli, or new city. Now the word Neapolitan falls into place. We visit two churches, built facade to facade in one of the narrow cobblestone streets of this ancient neighborhood. Both were bombed by the Allies in World War II. The Counter-Reformation church, the Church of Gesù Nuovo, was struck but completely undamaged because only a single explosive fell through the roof and did not explode. The church is incredibly ornate and displays the unexploded bomb casing as a miraculous relic. Directly opposite is the Gothic Basilica of Santa Chiara. It was leveled in the bombing, a smoking shell that burned for days. Today, it has been rebuilt. We learn of St. Giuseppe Moscato, a physician and professor who dedicated his life to treating the poor and needy, often providing free medical care and assistance. He was canonized by the Catholic Church in 1987. In Gesù Nuovo, we find his statue and learn from our guide Francesco of the tradition to touch the hand of this statue for healing. Francesco is a pragmatist and has no use for such superstition. For me, a superstition is just another religious ritual, a prayerful gesture to an unknown god. I try to respect the gods, especially the ones I don't know. If you spill red wine, touch it to the nape of your neck. If you spill white wine, say a novena, quick. I touch my left hand, the side of my recent operation, to the hand of Saint Giuseppe Moscato. My poor, sore arm feels better already. Much to explore, much to learn. At the beginning of this trip, I wrote, half in jest, that my personal journey is a quest for the perfect pizza. Virtually every day I have found some of the best. As it turns out, as wonderful as the pizzas have been throughout our explorations of Rome and Napoli, it seems that equally good pizzas can be found back at our home base of Providence. There is no more a perfect pizza than there is a perfect music. There, in a winding narrow street lined with bookshops just off the Piazza Dante, our tour guide points out the very oldest pizzeria in Napoli, the very birthplace of pizza, he says. It dates from the early part of the 18th century and is internationally recognized as the very spot where some genius had the idea of mixing flour, yeast, water, olive oil, tomatoes, and mozzarella, and thus creating the most simple and adaptable of international cuisine. And this is how I discover the birthplace of pizza in Napoli. At one point, after lunch, Vika stops me. Listen. I hear 100 melodies all at once. It is the Academy of Music, and the sound is the music of chance. You are lucky you have me to take care of you, she says. It gives you the luxury of thinking. It's true. But even more, none of these adventures, none of our travels around the world would happen without her divine intervention. Our address here in Napoli is 2 Via Rodolfo Falco. I write it so as not to forget where I am. We rest. In a little while, Vika leads us back out into the cool air of Napoli for a brisk walk to the summit of Castle St. Elmo. The views are, of course, to stop your heart. A familiar feeling for me as of late, but in this case, in a positive sense. From the top of the hill, we walk down hundreds of steps and enter a section of the city of decidedly Renaissance vintage. The sun is setting, and the night creeps in. To head back home, we find the funicular station, a metro car pulled by a thick cable through a network of tunnels. We stop for an Aperol Spritz, some sort of sparkling alcoholic beverage, quite popular both here and in Rome. And the day is done. Perhaps we'll watch a movie, but we are both exhausted and ready to crash. Tomorrow, the plan is to get up early, hike or subway to the train station, and head to Pompeii. Here we are, the next morning, Wednesday, on the subway to Stazione Garibaldi to make a commuter rail connection to Pompeii. We sleep late. Actually, I was awake at 4 a.m. writing but fell back to sleep and had a series of dreamlets, a string of disconnected vignettes with not much in common other than perhaps a sense of discomfort. Why am I telling you this? Because I like to write. Why? I write because I'm infatuated with words, and because there's nothing else to do. I write for myself and for my friends, and I expect no one to read it. These are personal word photos to keep in a drawer. I am both dreading and anticipating the trip to Pompeii. I know it's a not-to-be-missed experience, but something in me craves a day of reading under a tree. Sightseeing happens wherever you are, in the mind, in the paper reality of a book. But time and time again, my natural orientation is overwhelmed by Vika's constant and irrepressible outward movement. Whereas I can experience vicariously through words, she has a thirst for the infinite variety of lived experience. Now we are on the train. It is crowded with people from every part of the world. Two musicians, excellent musicians, one a violinist and the other on tabla, first play It's Now or Never. Now a banging raga of some sort. Now something that might be Lady Gaga. They have the richness of an entire orchestra. After every jam, the train erupts in applause. They are so good. I realize now they have a backing track, but they integrate with it flawlessly. It's so simple today to have backing tracks play via a wireless connection to a battery-powered speaker and combine live and pre-recorded music in this way. They end their rollicking set with Bella Ciao. They transform the train ride into a musical event. We arrive at the ruins of Pompeii. Imagine a town buried under 20 feet of volcanic ash. We walk for over 8 miles through the ruined streets and alleys of a wealthy city of 1st century ancient Rome. Many of the houses are so perfectly preserved their frescoes are intact and still glowing on the walls. Depictions of gods and goddesses, animal scenes, hunting scenes, and a striking depiction of Elysian mysteries, the reading of the script, the preparation of the sacred meal, the god Selenius playing the lyre, mythological beings playing music as a Maenad who initiates the ritual recoils in fear from what she has done. The union of the god Dionysius and the human Ariadne, the unveiling of sacred symbols of power, and the culmination of the ritual in orgiastic dance and flagellation. There are 2 figures, twisted and contorted, encased in volcanic ash. There are skulls and the bones of slaves, baths, mausoleums, amphitheaters, stone streets rutted with carriage wheels, all under a blistering sun in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius. On the train back to Napoli, music is provided by a single accordionist. Some of the best music we hear on this trip, we hear on this train. We get off at Stazione Dante for dinner, and after some frustration, we find pizza and a bottle of wine. On the metro home, we learn via a phone app that in the last 2 days we have walked over 17 miles. Little wonder we are exhausted. Back at the room, we finished the movie on the 4-day Neapolitan uprising against Nazi occupation. I watch a bit of my favorite series, I, Claudius, the 1977 BBC historical drama of court intrigues, Augustus the king, his scheming wife Livia, the mad emperor god Caligula, and the stuttering ruler Claudius, whose seeming simplicity saves him so that he survives it all and writes it all down. Here I am, a chronicler of our 2-week sojourn amidst the ruins of an eternal empire. Augustus and Livia lie in repose. Slaves play a strange atonal music, a harsh and strident reed punctuated by the sound of a lyre, both tuned to some long-lost Pythagorean mode. The Roman slaves play me out to sleep, where I will dream but will not remember. Out we go early the next day, Thursday. The plan is a museum of a city beneath the city, the vast network of underground tunnels and caverns from the Roman period. But no luck. We are too early, and the next admission is at 1:30. Then to a museum that houses the famous sculpture of the Veiled Christ. No go. Next admission, 12:30. We purchase pre-packaged salads and a box of sangria for lunch, and discover the Cathedral of Napoli, a Baroque eruption of florid ecstasy, a gilded wonder of wealth and religious devotion. There is a wedding here this morning, and parked on the piazza outside the church is a perfectly restored Porsche Speedster vintage 1959. Just as the ancient Romans built temples and mausoleums to demonstrate their wealth and status, today we mortgage for fancy cars and limos, fancy clothes, fancy halls, and fancy food we cannot afford for the same purpose: gaze with envy upon our material success. The third part of our plan for the day is the Botanical Gardens, a 3-mile walk through the crowded narrow streets of the city. We find it open and free and head to a place under a tree for lunch. No reservations, no appointments, no guided tours here. There is a stillness in this garden paradise, and cats, many cats and kittens. It is a sweet Neapolitan practice to provide daily feedings for stray cats. No sooner do we finish our salads that Vika is suddenly beset by mosquitoes. Want to walk around? Not really. I would like to just be here under this tree, in this wooded natural preserve, away from the crowds and all the things that one must see when in Napoli. There are times when to simply be here and now is enough. More than enough. This moment of stillness may well be the high point of our entire 2 weeks. Vika admits that she's ready to go home, that she's having a good time, but is ready to go home. I get that. There are times on these trips when I feel that, as we rush from place to place, we are running away from something as well. Running away from home, I suppose, or is it something else? If you just stop, home is where you are. These botanical gardens are home, something I've always known, but here, now, in my head, in a slightly different dialect. A short nap and out to a museum of contemporary art. Saul LeWitt. He is everywhere because all you need are his instructions, like a musical score, and you can create a Saul LeWitt of your very own. Jeff Koons. And exhibits and pieces from many contemporary Italian artists. The museum is deserted, atmospheric, and beautiful. I pose for a photo in a surreal Renaissance courtyard. I look cool in the photo. We have a bottle of wine and ramen for dinner, and they overcharge us €4 for the wine. It's not the first time, but it's the first time the two of us form an alliance and protest. Sorry. Yeah, right. They correct the overcharge. We exit exultant. We sleep. Off we go. It's Friday morning. Our bed and breakfast provides cards for a morning cappuccino and croissant, and we take advantage of it every day. We stop for a couple of pre-packaged salads and some fruit at a local market, and head to the Quattro Giornate metro station for our first destination of the day, a museum of classical and Renaissance art called Museo Capodimonte. The architecture and design of the Quattro Giornate metro station are so familiar to us now, we feel like Italian commuters on our way to work. The artwork in the station is surrealist, unlike anything you would see in the States. On the way, there is a man walking a gigantic sheepdog. we walk by a falafel place called I Telibano. Imagine that one back home. On the subway, the usual teenagers, some coupled and holding on to each other for dear life and young love. I feel at home. Exiting the metro station at Stazione Museo, we find ourselves directly in front of the National Archaeological Museum and change our plans and go there instead. This becomes a shattering experience. This is the most comprehensive collection of Roman sculpture, painting, pottery, metalwork, and glass in the world. All of it excavated from the ruins of Pompeii and its neighboring town, Herculaneum. Our tour of the ruins of Pompeii on Wednesday left us with a vivid sense of the architecture and scale of the city. But in the archaeological museum, we were stunned by the sophisticated aesthetic and sheer advancements of Roman life. It's easy to think of ancient Rome, or ancient Greece, or Egypt, as chapters in a textbook on the history of the Western world. But the Roman Empire lasted for over 1,480 years. In comparison, the United States is a baby. The painting and sculpture of the Roman Empire reached so high a level of sophistication, it would take centuries to recover the engineering, scientific, and artistic sophistication after its downfall. Think linear perspective was discovered during the Renaissance? Think again. The frescoes of ancient Rome suggest otherwise. A pantheon of Greek and Roman gods as rich and as varied as any in the Christian iconography bring form and substance to the fantastic skills of the painters and sculptors of the Roman Empire. From the frescoes, we can see how directly Christian tradition was derived from Roman tradition. We are left with an illuminated sense of the cycles of civilization and of modern technologies as only the most recent solutions to age-old problems solved eons ago in different and often wiser and more sustainable ways. But the deeper experience of this museum comes from the sense of ancient Rome not as an historical abstraction, but as real people, as individuals who lived. Here is their cookware, their pots and pans and mugs and dishes. Here is a folding bench made of bronze. Here is a musical instrument, a set of pipes depicted so clearly that I will recreate the scale it represents and make music based on these same ancient intervals. The Archaeological Museum is so extensive we plan to return to it tomorrow. Our passes are good for 2 days. Right now we are taking a break and hope to attend a free concert in the evening. The evening will not go as we imagined. We are late, so we walk briskly to take the funicular, pulled up or lowered down by cable, the miles-long and extremely steep hill that falls away down to the coast. But we take the wrong one. Realizing our mistake, we start running back up the innumerable steps to the summit of the hill, but it's a panic move. I am losing my breath and my heart is pounding, and I know this cannot be good for me. In a rare moment, I surrender to the reality of the condition of my heart and say so. I cannot do this. We stop, regroup, reverse direction back down the hill. Better to be late for the concert than collapse on the way. Our route takes us through neighborhoods we have never seen, teeming with people, very few tourists. As we near the coast, there are hundreds of outdoor restaurants, and the smell of the sea fills the air. Throngs of people in a hallucinatory crush. They are forming lines for a concert. Gigi D'Alessio. Finally, we reach a small church built wall to wall between two other buildings, Chiesa San Lucia. This is where the concert is supposed to be, but there is no concert. We check and recheck, and even ask a young priest on a parked motor scooter, a preferred mode of travel in Napoli. Music? Concert? He directs us back toward the Gigi concert. We do something rare and accept that there must be some mistake, and walk to the shore. It is a golden, romantic evening. The island of Capri is just offshore. Young people dive off the stone walls and swim in the ocean. There are lovers in the street. The whole world looks so high. We buy 2 beers, sit on the wall, feet dangling. Cruise ships anchor to our left. A small boat motors by, captained by a man with a cigarette. A busker sings karaoke, painfully off-key, a song by Oasis. We walk along the coast toward an old fortress castle. Lavish hotels, the stuff of James Bond, line the coast. 100,000 small cars, motor scooters, and motorbikes are buzzing by. There is a crush of people. GG, GG, GG. There, high up on a veranda of a ritzy hotel, GG himself has appeared. The crowd is ecstatic, as we are. We make our way to the castle, linger. The sun is setting. We take pictures of the Amalfi Coast, photos so stunning they beg for calendars. The dark is settling in, and we take a bus, the only transportation in the direction of our room. But again, we miscalculate and find ourselves virtually alone in a neighborhood that seems decidedly unsafe. A very drunk or perhaps demon-possessed woman rolls her eyes in an alley. Black cockroaches like June bugs scuttle by. We find our way to the long steps that will take us back to the top of the hill, but it is a gloomy and deserted steep upward climb of well over a mile. We are drenched in sweat and breathless, but there simply is no other way. We stop and rest, but I'm feeling lightheaded, and for the second time this evening I'm sensing an element of risk. It is a disheartening climb, but we cannot give up. What else can we do? The stairs are lined by doorways that lead to the kitchens and living rooms of the people of this city. There are no tourists here. This is a Neapolitan neighborhood. We hear them talking, arguing, laughing as we pass. I glance in a window and see a shrine to the Madonna on the wall. Here and there along the narrow passages of stairs, like an ascending maze in the darkening night, are small holy niches set into the walls, populated with photographs, statues of saints, and other sacred relics. The stairs are endless. We stop again. Count 50 stairs. Stop again. I know Vika is concerned for me. I'm concerned for us both. But suddenly, deliverance. We are rescued by the sight of cars, a street, and a small store, open and friendly, with cheap beer. We are so dehydrated the beer is lifesaver, and yes, we could buy a bottle of water, but we are hedonists on holiday, and we buy beer. We suddenly, inexplicably, seemingly miraculously find ourselves in our neighborhood. I buy a huge slice of the very best pizza I have had in Napoli so far. Here it's known as pizza marinara. Thick-ish crust, lots of sauce, generous oregano, and a sprinkling of Parmesan. It can be served cold, and in Providence it would be known as pizza strips or simply cold pizza. This one here tonight is the best yet, but not better than its counterpart back home. Providence, I realize now, is a real Italian town with pizza to rival the old country. I take the pizza back to our room, and with the rest of the beer, we celebrate an unforgettable night in Napoli. I wake up to a strong cooking smell. It reminds me of Vika's mom's building in Brighton Beach. A gorgeous Joni Mitchell song takes residence, Down to You, from her masterpiece, Court and Spark.
In the morning there are lovers in the street. They look so high. You brush against a stranger, and you both apologize.
I think the genius of Joni's language has everything to do with the photography of her words, how it can show both the surface and beneath the surface of commonplace things and events. A close documentation of everyday life becomes epic in simplicity and detail. Morrissey, at his best, captures this too, and even celebrates it. I see it, so I sing it. Sing your life. Allow me to apologize in advance for my self-indulgence, but this is what I'm trying to do. After a cappuccino and croissant, we head back to the metro and take the train to Stazione Toledo, the center of the Spanish Quarter, for a tour underground. Our host, Augustino, is another gifted storyteller who leads us on a descent of over 150 feet into dark subterranean caverns, a subsurface city of cisterns built by the Greeks to bring water to the city. The cisterns are interconnected through a network of tunnels and wells, which, in ancient times, extended beneath the entire city. Every house had access to water via buckets they lowered into wells 8 stories deep. And here we are now. It is cool, dark, damp, and scary. No place for the claustrophobic. Augustino spins a tale of the well men, small, slim men who were able to lower themselves down the wells, moving freely through the narrow passages connecting the cisterns, working to keep them free of rubble and debris. For compensation, these well men would climb up through the wells and enter a household where residents left them payment. But if they failed to do so, the well men would help themselves to valuables. This gave birth to the legend of the Monacelli, mythical ghostly figures known to all Neapolitan children as bringers of good luck when paid for their work and bad fortune when not. Augustino jokes that I would make a good Monacello. At some point, the underground water system became contaminated, which led to an outbreak of cholera, and many people died. The cisterns were drained and left hidden and forgotten for many years, a lost subterranean city, until the outbreak of the Second World War. Naples was used by the fascists as a primary naval headquarters and suffered over 200 Allied bombing raids, more than any other Italian city. During this period, much of the city was heavily damaged or entirely destroyed. The only safe place was deep underground, and engineers put the long dormant caverns and cisterns back into service as bomb shelters. Thousands of Italian citizens, fascists and partisans alike, lived far beneath the rubble of the city. Electrical cables were strung to bring power and light, and the remnants of that open wire power grid are still very much in evidence. The walls are covered with wartime graffiti, caricatures of leering Mussolinis and Hitlers, pretty girls, and other markers of the boredom of underground life. Weddings were held, funerals, religious services. Food was limited to cans and military rations, as fire of any kind was prohibited for fear of smoke. As we make our way through the tunnels, we are warned that some of the passages are incredibly narrow, no more than 2 feet wide, and some people are either too claustrophobic or too large to pass through. It really is very scary. Perhaps to lighten the ordeal, Augustino tells of how, when the men were away at war, the Monacelli would visit lonely wives, ply their favor with jewelry stolen from other homes, and when the men returning from the war found their wives pregnant, the women would say, "But I was not unfaithful, it was a Monacello." Such encounters led to many a small and skinny offspring of the horny and diminutive Monacelli, which, according to Agostino, helps explain the preponderance of little Italian guys that populate the city, even to this day. After the tour, we revisit the Archaeological Museum and tour the Secret Room, an extensive collection of erotic Roman art. It is a pornographic display long suppressed by civil and church authorities and now brought to light in celebration of the fully erotic human nature of ancient Romans. Indeed, the depiction of the gods and goddesses as exuberantly sexual beings seems far healthier than the repressed iconography of spontaneous impregnations, chaste virgins, and celibate saints who populate the Christian liturgy. We are exhausted, utterly spent. What day is it today? I don't even know. Saturday? Yes. We head to our room to take a break. After a brief nap, we spend some time revising our travel arrangements back to Rome for the return flight. It seems our original plans would have had us traveling outside to the very outskirts of the city on a 2-hour excursion that was difficult, if not impossible, to make. So instead, we will take a train from the centrally located Stazione Garibaldi. With this snag resolved, we head out to a seafood restaurant for the obligatory bottle of red wine, grilled swordfish, and fish and chips in a decidedly New England style. Tomorrow, we return to Rome. So we spend our last night in Napoli. Over dinner, we compare highlights of the many transformative experiences of our 2 weeks in Italy. It's early Sunday morning. A lone bird performs a beautiful song in a crystalline voice that echoes among the high-rise apartment buildings built after the war. She is a virtuoso. She sings, pauses, and sings again, each phrase a variation on the previous. Birdsong is a true wonder. If we stop and really listen, we can be deeply changed by it. Imagine, what is more incredible than a small and perfect creature blessed with the gift of flight, who wakes up at dawn and celebrates existence with a voice as pure as clear water, not for praise or reward, but for the sheer sensual pleasure of music. I would record this diva now, but as I write these words, she ends her song, a telepathy of angels. Out we go for the last cappuccino and croissant at the little shop that provides the breakfast for our bed and breakfast. We make our way to Stazione Garibaldi and find our train without a hitch. It seems very new and modern, lots of space, and by our standards quite posh and civilized. The ride to Roma will take about 3 hours, but only because the train makes many stops along the way. To pass the time, we play Scrabble, passing Vika's phone back and forth. She is the Scrabble queen and slaughters me. I'm not much of a gamer. My span of attention is like a gnat, and I tend to play to lose just to reach the end of the game. The Italian countryside is sweeping by, town after town, village after village, field after field. Fondi Sperlonga, Terracina Mare, Priverno, Fossa Nova, Cese Romano, Latina Compaglione. The only people I see are those on the platforms at station stops. In the area of a town called Falconia are the tents and awnings of an outdoor market. It is a slightly gray, quiet Sunday. There are a few people at the market. Who are they? What are their names? What do they do? What stories might they tell? What was for breakfast? What were their dreams last night? Do they have a cat? Do they stub their toe? Like to cook, play games, play the flute, play the lottery, talk too much, think too much, or not enough? Are they impatient, kind, generous, impulsive, in love, disappointed? Throughout the world, everywhere, there are people with beating hearts who live and breathe and laugh out loud and cry real tears and speak languages I will never understand. But when they look up at the nighttime sky, they see the same stars as I do. And in the infinite varieties of experience, there is an essential common humanity that has something to do with birth, death, and transcendence. I have not counted the words of this journal, but I can guess there are too many. And I have not carefully tested their flavor, but I can imagine it is a variety. From a simple did this, did that, to word balloons inflated with the gas of self-importance. And what comes directly to mind is what goes directly to my laptop, to my tapping on my phone. I try not to think. We arrive at the central train and bus station of Rome and find our room. We are greeted by an elderly Italian woman, folding with age, who, after some confusion, hands us keys and we settle in for our last night in Italy. The old building has a slightly haunted feel, dark wooden wainscoting and a rickety elevator that will do nicely for the evening. We find dinner at a sketchy place near the train station serving Indian, Middle Eastern, pizza, basically whatever you want. Of course, I get pizza. It's not bad. Vika has curried vegetables. I'm ready to crash, but Vika has other ideas. We walk a couple of miles toward the Villa Borghese and discover an ancient Roman structure converted to a lavish cathedral. We find the Borghese, now a museum of classical and Renaissance art, but it is closed for the day. As compensation, we discover a private collection, the collection of Paolo Monti, housed in a villa on the grounds of the Borghese with no entry fee. There is a Warhol portrait of Monti, his wife, and his daughter. Also a Larry Rivers, and an extensive group of Seravini and De Chirico. But it is hard for me to concentrate, hard to react. I feel sensory overload. I crave blankness, stillness, nothing. We stop for yet another beer. I think we are trying to postpone the end of these incredible 2 weeks. Tomorrow we have to get up at 5 a.m. to catch the 6 a.m. bus to take us to the airport for the flight back to Boston. The next morning, 5 a.m., we make our way to the bus that will take us to the airport, stopping at a confusingly automated McDonald's for coffee and egg and cheese on English muffins. Italians don't seem to normally have eggs for breakfast, and this is the first time in 2 weeks we allow ourselves the preview of home. It gives me heartburn. I'm ready for some respite from the average of over 8 miles we have walked every day, but not so anxious to see Boston. Goodbye to Rome, goodbye to Italy.